So today I wanted to share with you a conversation that I had with Curtis Butcher, a good friend of mine who's a wedding DJ, a photographer slash videographer, as well as an aspiring coach who is looking to really put out all of his content in a way that's easy for people to understand. And one of his biggest problems was his main landing site on his webpage. And basically what that looks like at the moment is it's a very it's a little confusing. What I'll do is I'll show you here really quickly. I'm going to switch over to this. All right, great. So we're here at Curtis's website, and the biggest problem with this website is that it's a little confusing for people who are landing on the page. And the reason why it's confusing is because he doesn't want to be pigeonholed as the weddings guy, the guy who does weddings, right? And so therefore, having that message be confusing and sort of full on, people don't know what to latch onto because he's got all of these things. We basically have a discussion around, really sort of shaping his identity and his complete brand presence online. So without further ado, I'll let you guys watch the video.
I'll still keep doing weddings for a while, but I might just do 10 a year and only if they're a good fit.
Yeah.
In fact, I mean, right now I'm on the hustle. Right now I will work 6 days a week. But
Was it 8 days a week, 25 hours a day?
yeah.
All right, cool.
I appreciate the insight, man. It's been good.
I guess we've also got to set the stage because we came in sort of abruptly halfway through the conversation. Do you want to start the conversation off? Let's start with a hook, a quick bit of like what your current problem is, what you were thinking about originally.
Oh yeah, so originally came into this conversation I wanted to have with you looking at how do I distinguish my different brands. So I've got a personal brand and I want to build a personal brand, but I do a lot of different things. I'm a bit of a jack of all trades, ideally master of all. I work in the wedding industry. I'm into philosophy, faith. I want to do podcasting. I do sales and marketing and help businesses. And I want to be all those things, and I am all those things, but how do I communicate that to the world and build an audience and do it in a way where all of those things can thrive rather than working against each other? And having our conversation has helped me and will continue to help me get clarity around all of those things. And so yeah, just trying to work out my next step so I can remove those barriers so I can start building all of those things without them working against each other.
So what we were talking about was people need to go through that customer journey, right? Especially because you have three brands, right? You've got your personal brand, you've got your company brand, and then you've got your product brands, right? You as Curtis Butcher, what do you do?
It's a great question. I do lots of things.
Okay, so what do you do for work to earn money right now?
Earn money at the moment. I DJ and host weddings.
Yep.
And I guess I'm in the wedding industry. I host weddings.
Yep.
Eventually, I'm going to be a celebrant as well, which will add to that. But now that's, as of next week, that's only going to be half my income. The other half is I'm going to be a contractor for sales and business development.
Yep.
So kind of straddling two worlds at the moment.
Yep.
And I guess I'm trying to figure out for my personal brand, what do I want to be known for, or what is the thing I want to attach that to?
Okay. Oh, well, obviously, let's start off with, obviously, you're not doing employment, like you're not going to advertise you're doing employment stuff, which is the contract that you've got.
Yeah, because it won't, building an audience. I mean, on LinkedIn, I might want to position myself for that.
Where you're getting your following right now is your weddings and your DJ stuff.
That is true, but it's also relatively insignificant in me running that business.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I would say it's not even that I have a following, I just have a network. I'd actually distinguish that because these are all people that personally know me.
So that's how you build your network, is because of that part, right?
Yeah.
So what you need to do is basically distinguish between, because people follow you for these things. They follow you for the DJ, they follow you for the weddings, they follow you for photography, cinematography, all of these things, right? So we need to distinguish between, your wedding, basically the stuff that you're doing for work to earn money right now, and the stuff that you want to do and teach people, right? So
well, because I kind of have three things going. There's the business, what I'm doing for money right now, which is the wedding business. Then I'm going to have the consultant business is just kind of me being a contractor, and
Yep.
that's going to be a major source of income, if not my biggest source of income
Yep.
over the next 12 to 24 months. And then I've got to have the business I'm hoping to build, which is the education, coaching, helping people with their creative businesses.
And so that's where you're stuck, is the coaching, and how do you position yourself as a coach?
Yeah, in a way where it feels like in some ways I'm trapping myself with what I'm doing in the wedding business, because I've gone and connected with all these people as my personal brand. Whereas if I just had set up like a wedding business brand to begin with, it wouldn't be as muddy.
Exactly.
But at the same time, like, I guess with a personal brand, you also want that breathing room, that flexibility to not have to paint yourself down into a hyper niche.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, we need to distinguish that you've got three different things. You've obviously got your personal brand, you've got your product, and you've got your business brand, right? And where you're stuck right now is what you said earlier, was that you've got curtisbutcher.com.
Yeah.
Now, curtisbutcher.com currently has a lot of
It's
wedding
everything.
vlogs. Yeah, it's got everything, right?
Yeah.
But like, for example, Dan Locke, right? Dan Locke's business stuff, what he does is he's coaching business. And that's what you find on Dan Locke, because that's a path that people follow to do what he does. That's not necessarily the business that he does to make money. That's just so that he can coach people doing what he does. So in your case, you've got Curtis Butcher that does the weddings and does all of that sort of stuff. You need to be able to segregate that, because when people have that journey.
Because for the like, as far as the product's concerned, people that will follow me for the wedding product is brides and grooms.
Brides and grooms, but it'll also be
and grooms and other vendors.
And other vendors, that's right.
Other vendors. Whereas people that follow my personal brand is people that are like, they want to become more like me, or walk in.
Yeah, and they'll be the vendors, because sometimes vendors may want to jump ship from their current niche to your niche, because okay, the market's moving sideways, so I might as well do this, or the market's moving south, so I might as well pivot. Or people might just be glamorized with the fact that, oh, hey, I saw this guy at a wedding and I think it's pretty cool. Maybe I could get into this. So they follow you because they saw you at a wedding, and they go, okay. They discover you on your Instagram, that you've got another link to another Instagram that's Curtis Butcher Coach, or Curtis Butcher Mentor, or Curtis, whatever it is, right? And then they go to your Curtis Butcher Instagram, and then it's got curtisbutcher.com. Go straight to the one-page funnel, which talks about you as a coach and all the success that you've got, helping people in their different industries doing what they're doing.
Yeah, I think the company page thing, I mean, I think from where I'm at now, the product-based thing makes a lot of sense, having just those layers. So I've got the Aspire product, which is me helping creative businesses and entrepreneurs.
Yep.
And then I've got the wedding product, which is brides, grooms, and other vendors.
Yep.
Then I've got the personal brand, which is basically, I can have links to those other things that I do, and I might even post about both of those occasionally.
Yeah.
But it's more just like documenting the journey. Is that
Yeah. Well, documenting the journey. You've got your YouTubes, right?
Yeah.
How many YouTubes do you have? Just one.
One YouTube at the moment.
So
Curtis Butcher TV.
Yeah. Okay. Curtis Butcher TV.
CurtisButcher.tv if you want to go to it and subscribe. But I've got like 9 followers. It's nothing yet.
I know you might be a little bit abrasive against having multiple things to manage different, but in order for you to maximize your reach on the algorithm, is you need to have separate things for that do different functions, because ultimately it's the different conversations, right? For example, Curtis Butcher Shorts is going to drive more traction to your longer form content, because how are you going to get traction on your long form content if they don't ever see it? And the only way they'll see it is through shorts.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm trying to think where the podcast that I want to do, now we're adding another thing into the mix, is, the podcast I want to keep open-ended, because I might talk to people from the wedding industry in the podcast. I might talk to entrepreneurs about their businesses, but then I also might talk to you about like faith, Islam, Christianity.
Yeah.
Like I want that leeway with the podcast to make it like episode based. But at the same time, like we're all like that with every podcast. We look at the title, we look at the guest, and decide whether we want to listen or not. I also don't need that to reach millions and millions of people. If it does, great. But if it doesn't, who cares?
Yeah, you do it for your own personal fulfillment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it might serve that podcast episode as content for one of those brands or businesses or products, but it doesn't have to.
Yeah. I think as many of these different channels that you put out, the more people will come to discover who you are, and it basically creates like a cult-like following. For example, you've heard of Dan Lok, right? How I found out about Dan Lok wasn't because of his coaching stuff, wasn't because of his sales stuff, wasn't because of his books. It was actually from his Wing Chun stuff. And I saw a few videos of his, and I was like, oh, this guy's cool. And I didn't really follow him until I started seeing his coaching stuff, his sales stuff. But I didn't really hard lock into it until I went back to his Wing Chun stuff and discovered, oh, it's the same guy who does coaching and sales. And that's when I really locked in. I'm like, yeah, now I'm like, okay, I understand this guy a lot more because I've gone through that epiphany journey to connect two pieces of information. I'm going, okay, this is the same person who does it. It's the same thing with you, right? People go through that journey. They'll see you a number of times. It's kind of like what Dan Priestley says, 7-11-4. You know, they need to see you a certain amount of times before they really get to know you, and then like they'll go through that discovery phase. And that's why you have to have multiple touch points on your social media, whether it's YouTube, whether it's Instagram, whether it's your Facebook page, and you have to be able to get comfortable with being able to manage multiple touch points.
Yeah, I think that separating, I definitely need to create the separate pages for both.
Yeah.
I think I need to deviate them both from Curtis Butcher because I think I hold myself back from creating as much wedding content as I could because I don't want to box myself in as the wedding guy.
Yeah.
And I don't want to create too much business content to then, like, I'm trying not to work against the two different brands, but if I just kept them separate, even if I had my main account pointing to either of those, it doesn't matter because if they truly want to follow me for just the business or just the weddings, then they can follow those.
Exactly.
They don't have to follow my personal account.
Exactly. So it's like you were saying before, right? I know you, so I can help distinguish like all the things that you've got going on. But for someone new entering your, let's say you've just got one Instagram
ecosystem,
they'll get confused. This guy does this guy does this guy does this. They don't have the time to discover this about you. And it's kind of like dating, right? It's like you don't go out on a date and you just tell them everything that you do, because it's like, what the fuck, I'm confused. So you want to have that discovery journey and that process. So yeah, I think you're well on the way to like shaping that. And I guess this now begs the question, how do you manage this? And it's really all down to your systemized process. For example, opening up a structured Google profile that is just for an admin, so that later on you can hand this stuff over to someone who's going to run your social media.
Well, see, this is the thing. I think, like, even with the wedding brand, what would make most sense is to not call it my name at all, to call it like, something weddings, or just like, Blue Love, or some kind of
like moment reels or whatever.
Whatever. Because
that's
then it gives the ability to either sell it later, bring more people onto the team. It just kind of like gives that flexibility.
Yep.
With that being something able to grow. Yeah. And then
you can hand that over at some point if you wanted to, and it doesn't get stuck with you and people just expect you to rock up at all your jobs.
Yeah. Not that I'm trying to build an agency with it, but I think long term it would be the smart thing to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of people fear that because they're sort of stuck in this self-employment mode. It's like, no one else can do it better than me. Yeah. We're not, the goal isn't to start an agency. The goal isn't to do that, but it's to create system processes that alleviate the time and energy needed to fulfill this job. Because once you start being able to insert someone into that role, then it gives you time to go and focus on the things that you really are passionate about, that you will wake up and get out of bed for.
for me, the product brand Instagrams
Yeah.
seem straightforward. And I think even with Aspire, I think just like keeping that as the core product, and then there's just like it helps two people. It helps people on the audience building side and the creating content, and it helps people on the business side of being a creator and entrepreneur. So it's like that's pretty well packaged. That makes sense in my mind.
Yep.
Easy for someone to understand.
Yep.
Helps people on two sides of the same coin, right? Then the wedding brand also makes sense. I can change the color palette, the aesthetic to match brides, grooms, the wedding industry. Easy.
Yep.
I guess what I'm then trying to figure out, even the live workshops that works in the coaching setting, is what do I do with the personal brand? Do I just double down on making that my podcast with then links to the other two, and then could just be behind the scenes of me at a wedding occasionally, post a behind the scenes of me, you know, doing a presentation, speaking. So, and then where am I? I guess I'm trying to build all three audiences simultaneously, or not, maybe not even build the personal brand, but just build the other two, and then the personal brand gets built as a byproduct to building the other two.
So the way I look at podcasts is just an extension of your coaching business. It's the marketing arm of your coaching business, because that's how you're farming your content. You're out there looking for the right people to talk to generate ideas to go and shape and really sort of
well, so then do I create multiple podcasts? Like, for instance, I could do a podcast specifically for the wedding industry.
I think yes, because they have to have relevancy to that audience, that target audience. And then later on, that'll funnel into your coaching, because you're basically getting a speakerphone and directing it at a certain audience for every single different podcast. But ultimately, they'll discover who you are as Curtis Butcher, as a coach. Like, hey, if you're interested in doing this, at the end of that podcast, you plug curtisbutcher.com.
Right. So I think how I do it then is I create the business brand or the business entrepreneurship brand around marketing, sales, blah, blah, blah. Box that in. If I have podcast guests on for that, I call that one show. Then I could have another show, which is, because I wanted to do Curtis Butcher podcast to kind of just encapsulate everything.
Yeah.
But really, but maybe I do just do that. Look, and then I have the episodes, because I'm never going to sell the podcast, right? Or outsource it. So like where I then post that podcast can depend on whatever the topic is about. For instance, if it's on faith and spirituality, fitness, I can post that just on my personal brand. Yeah. But if it's on entrepreneurship and sales, post that on the business brand. And if it's me talking to, a wedding photographer about how to structure the ideal wedding day, then that can go in.
I think anything that's tutorial based, that should run under a coaching business platform, right? And then, like, let's say, for example, it is also to do with, your weddings. Anything under that wedding channel should be really directed to more so towards customers, because they're the people that need to understand your business, right? So it will be FAQs under that wedding-based business brand. So you'll be like, what's a save the date video? What's a prenup video? Whatever it is, right? What's all of this sort of stuff? How do I understand my invoice? All of those videos should be under that. Marketing videos for like coaching, how to do that business under your coaching brand. And then your personal stuff, you keep it under Curtis Butcher. There's nothing wrong with separating it like that. Or you could even just have everything under Curtis Butcher and just go, this playlist for this. But that's if you want to keep it, if you're not really too fast on maximizing the algorithm reach.
Yeah. I don't know that YouTube is a very much more standalone.
No, because you'll
have video, isn't it?
You'll have backlinks. Once you cross-reference channels. That's why collabs are important, and that's why YouTube Shorts channels paired with your long form channels are important, because they're backlinks back to its own channel, and that's what boosts the algorithm. Now, this is probably going to change over time, because YouTube always changes their.
I think definitely building if I plan on networking or marketing more in the wedding industry, I definitely see the need to create separate YouTube channel, separate everything for that.
Of course.
And then to gear towards brides. Yeah, I guess where it gets a little bit more complicated is the personal brand versus business brand. How to, I'm thinking of for the YouTube here.
Yeah.
Because I don't mind like you and I having this conversation, talking about business on my personal channel.
Yeah, that's fine. Because it can cross-pollinate between the business channel and the personal channel if you need it to. If there's like little shorts that you can pick up, is like, okay.
Yeah. I guess the other side of it is too, it's like you got to look at the only reason I want to have like one channel, for instance, particularly like so say on the one YouTube channel I want to talk about like faith and like trending topics like to do with the news, we're talking about fitness. You and I could have 3 different conversations. We could talk
Pretty
about
much.
faith, we could talk about health and fitness, and we could talk about business.
And that's the long form podcast.
Yeah, on the long form podcast. Now, I don't want to have post the business on that channel and then this on that channel. I just want to put it all on one channel.
Are you saying this because you're lazy to do it?
I'm saying it because I find that like from a time point of view, I'm going to end up I'm not going to do all of these proportionately. I'm going to put a lot more, I'm going to end up doing more of one than the others. One's going to preoccupy most of my time.
Okay.
And so the other ones will inevitably suffer because of that.
So
the wedding one doesn't need to get big. It just needs to be niche.
Yep. So I guess where you could go from this, right? Because podcast is the fastest way to develop content, obviously, because it's just a natural flow of conversation. You don't have to do any content ideation, anything like this. It's just like, here's a problem. How do we solve it? Da, 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 right? And then it flows on to whatever natural conversations flow from there. Focusing on that is perfect because then, and the reason why I still would suggest having multiple channels is once you cut that up, right? You can still post the long form content on that channel. And then you take the snippets from the other bits and then slowly insert them into, okay, if this is relevant to the business coaching, put that there. If this is relevant to your personal stuff, you have a separate thing that's got like maybe it's just a religious or spiritual playlist that's only got to do with that. Then again, people might actually like the entire long form content because they're now getting to know
holistic,
you. Yeah. And that's why it would make sense.
I think for the long form podcast, I prefer it that way.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, the only reason people listen to multiple episodes of podcast is because they start to like the common thread of interest of the host or the unique makeup of their personality. Whereas something like watching a 3-minute FAQ video is only if you're into that niche and that specific thing.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're not very direct about it, people switch off very quickly.
Yeah.
Whereas if people want to jump on because they're fucking cleaning the house or they're driving in their car, like I really like Curtis, I'll listen to this. Well, sorry, I shouldn't be swearing on this, but I'll listen to him because I like listening to him. So that's perfect because it garners more attention that way.
Yeah. It's good, man.
Yeah. How do you see percentage-wise out of the 3 content channels? Where would that break up? Would you say 80% on your Curtis Butcher, or maybe even 60% Curtis Butcher, 30% on business, and then 10% on?
Well, if I'm looking at if I'm looking at the next 12 months, what's bringing in the money, I think in the short term, focusing on the weddings for the next 12 months makes a lot of sense. Because I think that's low-hanging fruit for just building my personal brand and that wedding business and maybe transitioning that rebrand into its own entity. That can make a lot of sense. But then I don't need to keep growing that for 5 years. I just need to do that initial shift and segmentation. Then, and I might create like a 20-long video YouTube series on FAQs in that industry, and then I might have 20, 30 podcasts with different vendors in the industry. But I'm not going to worry about repurposing all those into heaps of clips in the way I'd want to for my business brand. I just want to have because that could be pretty low maintenance in terms of like I just do the master edit of the podcast, upload it. I don't even worry about SEO too much. No. It's just there. Yeah. Right.
And you can use it for later to like cut it up. Once you're making good money, then like someone will cut it up.
Yeah, and then even that Instagram could be like a post a week. Could either be an image of me at a wedding or a highlight video if I want. But again, like I said, I don't even need to overly market that business. It's just good to have its own thing. So I think then I've got obviously this consultancy contractor role I'm going into, which is going to preoccupy at least 50% of my work week. Yeah. Which is good because it's going to pay the bills, and that's in the whole business and entrepreneurship vein. So there's certainly lessons I could teach on that. And then, potentially because I've got that extra money too, I could hire a video editor or someone to actually repurpose my content for me. So I think the time I'm not doing that role, I focus on me just physically either writing or recording and then let someone else do the post-production.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I think it looks like doing podcasts and creating video series. I think that the business brand, that's what that's going to look like. But even in terms of doing the video series, my plan is to host, I think we talked about this before, but to host live workshops, like webinars,
Yes.
build the audience slowly. And then the first 20 minutes or half an hour of that webinar, I won't have anyone interrupt me. I won't answer any questions. And then that becomes a video that then goes on YouTube for that training.
Exactly.
So I'm kind of building the courses and the trainings and the YouTube videos live while building my email list. And then I'll also have the podcast on top of that. And the whole purpose of the podcast is to focus on collaborating with other people who already have audiences.
Yes.
Yeah.
What you'll also find is when you have those collaborations, you'll find that those people can contribute to your internal course content as well, because that's a segue for them to get their brand out there from your paid gated content.
Yeah, I mean, for instance, like if I do a podcast with Calvin and we talk about public speaking and how to frame a presentation, he's amazingly credible in that area. In fact, and having a 30-minute concentrated conversation with him on that topic would be amazing content for charisma class.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Because I'm a good speaker, but he's probably better than me, and he's excellent. He's on another level. So he would be the perfect person to have in and talk about how to become more charismatic and come across better.
What's good about these kind of podcasts as opposed to an interview podcast where you're just asking those people questions is that it's more relatable as opposed to if I'm just asking a bunch of questions and it's really just about the other person, because they basically speak they're different conversations that hit different notes or different purposes.
Well, one's an interview documentary and the other one's a dialogue, right?
Well, exactly. And so this sort of brings me back to what I did want to say earlier is that each different YouTube that you have, the personal brand, the business brand, and the product brand, is that they have different purposes, and you got to keep that in mind when you're launching those, because that's going to determine what type of content goes on what. For example, the product brand is that they're all FAQs. You need to make sure that they speak to your customers. The other one's speaking to people who want to learn from you, and then the other one is really, hey, people getting to know you. So having that back in the back of your mind gives the person who's going to fulfill that role the idea of like, okay, where they're going to put it. You don't really need to tell them what to do because now they understand that's their role.
Yeah, what it belongs to. It's good, man.
Yeah.
Yes, give me some clarity. I think I need to do these rebrands as soon as possible because I think it's gonna free me up so much from that blockage I've been experiencing with not creating content.
Yeah.
Because I'm so paranoid I'm way overthinking how it's going to be perceived by the current 700 people paying attention to me.
Yeah.
Which in the grand scheme of things is absolutely nothing.
Yeah. Off the record,
we'll call that a wrap.
No, keep on. Like keep recording, but like maybe
off the record. Okay.
We can snip some parts in and whatever. I had a lawyer who's she's not a lawyer in Australia, but she's a lawyer fucking in the UK, right? Huge influence, not in the public eye, but in the real estate space. She'd mentioned to me, she gives me a lot of advice in terms of real estate. She mentioned to me, oh, I can have a look at your podcast and blah, blah, blah. So she'd mentioned to me, why are you doing podcasts with this person? And I'm like, why? Because this person is a goofball. And she explained to me all these things, and like it made me really conscious about, okay, do I even publish this stuff, right?
Yeah, who do I associate? Who you associate with can be a negative.
Yeah, and my initial reaction, because I understand like a lot of people can have judgments of someone because that person might have fucked up, but I always believe, right, that anyone can make a mistake, and it just depends on how that person has recovered from that mistake. Really, is how we should judge it, and it made me take a step back about in terms of thinking about publishing it. Do I publish it? Do I not publish it? Right? Does she need to make a public apology or whatever it is? And where I landed is that this girl who'd I'd done the podcast with, still haven't released the podcast because I'm considering where I'm going to go with it, but I've made my decision. is that she, when I pressed her about the certain situation that she had, she basically, she'd moved from one industry to another because basically she was running Airbnbs and doing management, but she did like a webinar with another bloke and he presented the numbers which were wrong, and then people had emailed that guy and said, oh, blamed him, like, oh, hey, these are bullshit numbers. Why you lying to us? And anyway, she got reported to an association, and that's sort of what was the downfall of her previous business. And this is why she pivoted into what do you call it? Interior decoration, right? So the podcast was half about running Airbnbs and half was about her business itself.
Yep.
And so yeah, when I pressed her about it, she's like, yeah, you know what? I made a mistake, and you know, I may not be perfect, but I'm the first one to open up, you know, to admit that I was wrong, and you know, um, admit that you know, I don't know everything, but I'm happy, you know, I'm happy to front for my faults. So, anyways, I think going back to the conversation in terms of like publishing your content and being apprehensive about that sort of stuff. Like, where was I at?
I think too, you do have to be mindful of what you end up getting known for, because at the
That
end
is
of the
true.
day, like the people that you interact with, their reputation rubs off on you. And like, say you interview this person, like most of your, like, for instance, she's made a mistake in the past,
Yeah.
and like I would hate it if I was coming on podcasts and every time I go on a podcast, because the interviewer is so concerned about their reputation that they always start by addressing the big
elephant in
mistake
the
I
room.
made in the past. But
Yeah.
but now you're just letting everyone new know about my big
Yeah.
mistake.
Yeah.
Like I would hate that. But at the same time, to protect yourself, you need to address what everyone's thinking, or like for you to then have a conversation and not bring that up.
Yeah, and here's where sort of
I think it's really tricky.
it is really tricky, and at the same time, I'm a person that like who believes in compassion. Right? Everyone fucks up, right? And it's really the podcast then becomes more of like a real thing. How do you deal with this in the public eye? Because you're now dealing with your own personal perception from other people, and then you're also dealing with the other person's perception. And if you discover that this person is like a piece of shit, then why continue like having it? Or you can just like cut it off. Like I saw this video about this Muslim guy who had a person who was sort of like a narcissist and had a messiah complex, and he cut him off straight away. Pretty much 11 minutes into the episode, where this guy does an hour, 2 hour podcast, cut him off pretty quick because he seemed to embarrass himself. Whereas I've seen some of his other podcasts where, or even on different podcasts, I've seen people like they go through that discovery phase, and it's like, yeah, okay, so you've got that problem. Have you dealt with it? And as in my journey in terms of like Perth Unplugged and Bali Unplugged, I've met quite a few people who've gone through business failure, and you know they're umming and erring about repairing the reputation. I'm like, yeah, look, we've had a conversation. I think really off camera we discover, okay, well, what's the best path of you getting back on track, because you are a decent person, and I see that. How do we push all this negative content further below? You just need to fucking pump it out. You just need to show people and not give a fuck.
And I saw Alex Samosi talk about branding. It was a really good video, and he was talking about how if you imagine your brand as a collection of associations, people associate you with all different things, and it's like every time you get a new association, you're adding a flower to the bouquet.
Yes.
Now, if you've only got 4 flowers in your bouquet and you got one that's dead and ugly, everyone's going to go, "What's up with that one?" And the way to deal with a bouquet is with a brand. You can never get rid of dead flowers. The flowers you've got are the flowers that are there, and they'll always be there.
Yeah.
So if you've got a bad one, the best thing you can do is just, if you want to be known for blue flowers in your bouquet, you just need to go get so many blue flowers that no one notices that dead one anymore.
Yeah.
And that's really how bad publicity works.
Well, that's what I think.
People never. You can't take away what happens.
No.
But you can become so known for other things that people kind of just don't even pay attention to it anymore.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, yeah, he's done something shit. Everyone's done something right.
And ideally you don't, but I think that's the ultimate brand management technique, is to just
And
do more of the thing you primarily want to be known for.
and it's whether you're the person that's done it or someone else has done it, done whatever bad thing that they've done. I think yeah, it's really just about pumping out the content and just being excelling and not worrying about the shortfalls that they've had. Yeah. But you're right. Like I've met a number of people who just want to bring up the elephant in the room in the first place, but I think it's that journey of getting over that business failure.
Yeah, and I think I think addressing that too, like, you know, if I was to come into an interview and someone brings up the first thing they bring up is something I regret in the past or a vulnerability for me, I would probably even cancel that interview. Or I'd think about it differently because I'd realize they're in this for them at that point. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It would definitely fill me with distrust because then I'm like, oh, they're just in this to make themselves look good.
Yeah, they just doing
Immediately.
it for a hype thing,
Yeah.
just because they're jumping on a band.
Like if you want to talk about that, coming on to say my show, or me coming onto your show, and we agree, then it's fine.
Yeah.
But otherwise, it's a bit of a dog move.
Oh, exactly. It's like putting you on the spot. Yeah. And I guess like with a lot of the people out there who have,
It's like, for instance, with Russell Brand. Like he just got baptized the other day, right?
Yeah.
Big, whoa. And I saw someone, I think my uncle shared it on Facebook, and then I saw people comment on that. They're like, oh, you know, it doesn't count for real. This guy was like a philandering with women in the past, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, the whole point of him getting baptized is that he's on this journey and is now trying to go in a new direction.
Exactly.
He can't change what he did, but it's like, imagine if like you bring Russell Brand comes onto your podcast.
Yeah.
Huge following, has got opinions on all sorts of stuff, and all you want to talk about is what he did when he was in Hollywood.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just a, you know,
and the whole point of
if he wants to talk about it, sure, but
yeah. No, I absolutely agree with you, but and I think, hang on, yeah, I absolutely agree with you. I think I think with someone like Russell Brand, it's important to take note that with someone like that, or even anyone, right? The fact that they've gone through that journey gives them the authority to even speak about that because they've done that mistake. And it's like, here are the lessons that I've learned from it. And that's how, and that's, I guess that's the reason why we have this content, is so that we can learn from others. And what's the fastest way to learn from
mistakes? Yeah. Learn from other people's mistakes. You don't have to. And I think it's up for everyone to have like a bit of a gracious, forgiving outlook.
Oh, of course.
Because if you don't have grace, then people never want to show their vulnerabilities.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No one, because if you're like,
if all you know is you're going to get hit by judgment and be persecuted,
why
would you share any of your pearls of wisdom that can come through the dumb things you did do?
Oh, it's hilarious. So I had a relative the other day go, like, she was asking her mum, and she's like, "Oh, mum, can I ask you about business advice? Blah blah blah. I want to start a shop. Blah 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 blah." And I'm like, "Hey, how come you're not asking me about it?" And she's like, "No, because you failed in business." And I'm like, "Hello, I've been doing business for over the last decade. Just because I've failed in business." And then, her mum goes to her, "Well, exactly. Like, when you go through business, you fail." And then, so she continued on a rant, and then later that evening, I was like, I don't know why I'm on this tangent because now I've got like the thing about it. I hate that stage fright.
That's all right.
Yeah. Yeah. She goes, "Oh, I asked her." She started saying something about, "Oh, I need money." And I go, "Gab, you don't need money to make money." And she's like, "Yes, you do. You need money to make money." I'm like, and it made me realize that I'd sort of got stuck at this plateau about trying to raise money, and I'm like, hang on, why do I need to raise money when I can just like fucking prove a point that you don't need money to raise money? I mean, you don't need money to make money. Just fucking keep as lean as possible. No.
Just letting you know we're closing.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
We'll get out of here.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm kidding. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So we
Limiting
wrap it up?
beliefs. Yeah, we should wrap it up.
Alright.
Get out of here.
Should we like do a like fucking rap thing?
An outro.
Yeah, an outro, yeah.
I don't know. I mean, we can recap what we talked about, but we talked about me doing with the branding,
Yeah.
and working out my path forward. And we talked about reputation, brand, what you get known for, who you connect with, who you get affiliated to, and some various other tangents.
What was your biggest takeaway?
That I need to launch 2 separate brands, product brands.
Yeah.
And I think that doing that is going to take off a lot of pressure to feel like I guess you get so paranoid about how you're going to come across and how you're going to, like, it makes it for me thinking, how do I get something complex across to just, I can keep it simple by just separating it.
Yeah. Okay. That's good.
That's probably the key takeaway.
Nice.
But then I've also got to just be mindful as a personal thing for me too, is like, there's only so much time I can invest into everything. And maybe I just need to let some things die. Like, do I even need to build the wedding business at all?
Exactly. Because
And I got to work that out.
What's the most important use of your time?
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I know for sure is that I want to build this content creative business and do a podcast.
Because that's leveraged work.
Yeah, it's leveraged work, and I can see myself sustainably doing that for 10, 20 years. I
And you enjoy it.
I can't see myself DJing 50, 60 weddings a year in 10 years.
It's hectic.
I
Too
can't
much
see
trading
myself
time.
with a young family doing that.
Yeah.
I think I'll still keep doing weddings for a while, but I might just do 10 a year and only if they're a good fit.
Yeah.
In fact, I mean, right now I'm on the hustle. Right now I will work 6 days a week. But
Was it 8 days a week, 25 hours a day?
yeah.
All right, cool.
I appreciate the insight, man. It's been good.
Cool. Shall we wrap up?
Cool. Done.